Hi everyone, I'm Rachel Stevens with RedMonk, and we're here for another What Is How-To video. Joining me today is Joel, and Joel, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Joel Worrall. I'm the Director of Open Source and Developer Advocacy at New Relic. So what is New Relic One application? It's really just a Webpack app, right? So it's a collection of JavaScript, CSS, markup, all put together. So it's React and GraphQL. So GraphQL is our GraphQL API is the way that you interact with all the data in your New Relic One account, and then you build React components that interact with that data, and you deploy that entire experience inside of New Relic One. I absolutely. So what we're going to do today actually is we're going to go ahead and interact with one of the open source applications, download it, and I'm going to deploy it directly in front of us. But one of the things, that little secret about our platform is actually the entire application in New Relic One is really constructed in a very, very similar way, right? So the dashboarding application, our logging product, they're all basically the exact same thing. I mean, the tools that we're giving developers to be able to build applications on top of the platform are extremely similar to the ones that we use internally to build curated applications in New Relic. Okay. So how easy is this to do? So I'm going to go ahead here to developer.newrelic.com and check out some of our open source apps. And I'm looking here right now at our top application. So everybody knows what top is from the Unix command world. And so what we did is built an example application and deployed it in open source. And you can actually go ahead and find it right here on New Relic GitHub organization. So it's right here, NR1 top. What we're going to do is use the NR1 CLI, which I've already installed on my machine and is easily available. You just click here, build your own application. So I've installed that CLI. Now I'm going to go ahead and execute this command in order to clone this nerd pack that we refer to, this collection of JavaScript, onto my local machine and put myself in a position to deploy it in just a couple minutes. That make sense?
Fantastic.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to run NR1 nerdpack clone -r and then the URL to the repository. And here we go. It's going to go ahead and clone the repository.
All right, and this is just bringing the open source repo down to your local machine.
And then it's going to, just like a lot of other JavaScript-based applications, it's going to install some dependencies. It's going to give me an account and API key specific UUID so that I know when I'm deploying this application, it belongs to my account, or if you're an organization that's got accounts and sub-accounts, it'll provide access to all of those. Now I've got an instance of this top application running directly, or now copied into my interface. Okay, so next step I'm going to take here is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run it. I'm going to actually deploy it to my New Relic instance. So here I'm logging into New Relic, and this is this application is actually we refer to it as like an application that's accessed through the Entity Explorer. So this is going to be connected to infrastructure hosts, and I've kind of blown up my screen here so you can see the code a little bit more. But just to give you some context, so this application is going to run, and it's connected to an entity that's an infrastructure host. Okay, so what does it take to do that? Well, what I need to do is run an NR1 nerdpack.
Oh, need an R. There we go.
Nerdpack publish, and I'm in this directory right now. So it's going to go ahead and package up this code and deploy it into my customer-specific artifact registry so that I've got access to it. Okay, so there we go. It's deployed. In fact, let me go ahead, and if I want to see information about what's in my registry, I'm going to do that just to be clear. Okay, I've got info. It's right there. So now what I need to do is I need to deploy it to a channel, and that channel's name is stable. And these instructions are actually available in every one of the open source repos that just give you some basic guidance here. And then the last thing I'm going to do is, actually, I think this channel is already subscribed to this, but I'm going to go ahead and subscribe to it. And now what I should have is when I go log in to New Relic One, I go select a host, an infrastructure host. I'm going to go select host proxy REST 5. And you see right here, I've got this application top. So I'm going to click on it. And let's see. There we go. Okay, so this is the top application. Just like we see here in the screenshots of this open source repository. Mm-hmm. It's now running right inside my New Relic instance. It's giving me an overview over a time window of all the processes that have been running on this particular host. And I can choose individual processes and go look at just how's Java been performing over that time period. If there were parent or child processes, I'd see what those are. Or upstream or downstream, I can access it from there. All that entire experience, I mean, you and I was kind of talking a lot, but I mean, that whole experience could take maybe a minute in order to deploy an application.
Yeah, it definitely seemed fairly straightforward. Can you talk through maybe some of the things, like when you talked about subscribe, can you talk a little bit about what you're accomplishing with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what we're doing there is kind of implementing a 3-step process that helps you helps teams to be able to continue to do development on a particular nerd pack, so an application. So if I look at my info here, what I should see is now the latest version 1.6 is the one that's deployed to my New Relic instance. Mm-hmm. It's possible you could have, say, your CI tool that's connected to a particular repository, and every time you check in new code to your master branch, it automatically generates a package that's deployed to New Relic and now up in the artifact registry, available to potentially be used by your end user customers inside your organization. Mm-hmm. But the step of deploying is basically saying this version is the one that I want everyone to use now. Okay. So it gives you the ability to maintain the same types of patterns that you'd expect from continuous integration and continuous delivery, to bring that directly into the way that you're building and deploying apps in the New Relic.
Yeah, automation is such a huge part of being able to deploy software effectively. So that's great.
Yeah. So sometimes, I mean, a lot of people have asked me the question I've been working at New Relic about 18 months, and I've been kind of focused on this programmability initiative from the very beginning. Well, what can you actually do with these apps? And my answer, trying not to be flippant, is like, well, what can you do in a React app? Mm-hmm. And of course, the answer is pretty much anything. So the better answer is, what should you do with a New Relic One application? So what I thought maybe I could do is actually just walk us through a couple other examples. These are all things that are part of our open source library. And again, they're not meant to describe the complete edges of everything that's possible, but to kind of help paint that art of the possible for developers that are looking to solve unique, bespoke problems in innovative ways. So would that be helpful?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, great. Okay, so here's a couple examples. So first of all, and I kind of clicked through this a little bit in the last video, but we recognize that we've got a whole bunch of really powerful data in, say, something like our infrastructure agent. Right? So we're collecting things that are telling us not only when things aren't performing well, but when things are performing extremely well in relationship to, key signals with memory usage and disk usage and CPU usage. So what if we could take that data and then align it with an outside data source, like, say, for instance, Amazon pricing data, in order to deliver something like, say, an analysis of exactly how well your cloud spend is functioning. So this example in our demo application isn't particularly overwhelming because it's only talking about one particular account. But if I were connected to hundreds of accounts, and we've done this, I've deployed this for customers who've deployed this across hundreds of accounts, where the question, exactly how over-provisioned am I with my EC2 instances, we can answer that question using the data that's in our infrastructure agent and help you figure out, based on Amazon's pricing data, exactly how much potential savings might be there, so you can start to make some real meaningful decisions about what to do with your information.
Yeah. So on the New Relic side, it would then be combined with where you have seen historic load patterns, or how are you kind of basing those estimates from?
Yeah. So what that is based on our calculations over the time window that you've given us, to try to help you sort out questions like, right, if I'm looking to make sure that my utilization is only at a particular level, we can kind of flag that as something that's either optimized or not optimized, and then inside a particular account across all your instances, give you a recommendation that says not only what have we observed as far as your max CPU usage or memory or network traffic, but then also what suggested instance you can move to in order to generate a similar performance without hurting the performance of any of your applications. And then we can export that data to CSV and let someone who's a spreadsheet jockey go through that process and help figure out like what's going to be the best decision for you.
Yeah, I imagine there are lots of people in the organization who would be interested in that number. Is this something where you have designed alternative audiences to view this data, or is it mostly still developer focused at this point?
I mean, once you deploy one of these applications into your environment, it's available for anyone to be able to review. Yeah.
So you can give access to like your finance or accounting teams.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Anyone who's got access to New Relic has access to that data. Okay. So another example. So one of the major questions that we run across is kind of paying attention to really key user pathways and customer journeys, right? So we've got this concept inside of our dashboarding tool called a funnel query that allows you to sort of like ultimately kind of bake down and down further into what's the performance look like across like various steps, or at least how many people are sort of filtering through, how many sessions are filtering through a particular funnel. Well, this is kind of, think about that, but then with the power of programmability on top of it, doing something even more advanced. So imagine that I could take the idea of a funnel query and then align it with cohorts of users. So I want to pay attention to what the experience is like for my entire user population versus someone's in a particular geography, or even someone maybe who's using just a particular device type, right? And I can then look across that and see how those are measured through each step in this funnel, from my homepage through, in this case, it happens to be like an e-commerce funnel that's looking at plans, and then into a cart, and then finally into my checkout. And then to take the next step, I can then define.
Quick question there. Your cohorts, are those tying back to like your typical New Relic entity views, or are these things that you are creating specifically for this app?
Yeah, so these are customer defined or custom defined cohorts of users. So based on the data that you're collecting in NRDB. So like in this case, this happens to be working off of page view data. So it's looking at your event data, and then I've got specific attributes in my events that are telling me things like what city something's coming from.
Okay.
So
you
it's
can define as you go.
Yeah, it's an NRQL query, a Merkle query. That's in each of these steps. And then when I click in on any one of these, say like this here, I'm seeing like a really bad error rate, but my average performance seems to be pretty high. Now what I can do is actually look at the time series data for this particular entire funnel, for this particular cohort of users, which happens to be all users, and then in this step, and help me understand, are my page views up or down based on measurements that I consider to be relevant, and then see what that experience has been like over the last, in this case, 24 hours compared to the previous 24 hours, which is all things that you've been able to do, say, with dashboards in New Relic before. But now I've got kind of a multi-step process to help me or my entire team kind of analyze something that's really important, like say on a big game day, what's the experience that we've built for users actually doing, and how do we identify problems faster and then quickly resolve them.
Very cool. So the goal then is to have a more fine-grained view of how performance is working across various different subsets of users.
Exactly.
So do you have any other examples that you can offer?
Yeah, okay, so do just one more, and this is another open source application that we've released that's called Neon. Okay, so the concept here is we recognize customers have ways that they think about their business that don't always necessarily directly align to the way we collect and manage performance data. But we have the capability to be able to align that data in ways that make sense to their specific business need. So what this is doing actually is it's doing alert aggregation. So the example here, I'm looking at a fulfillment center that's dealing with 4 different locations where this fulfillment activity of, like, say, a particular product is being conducted. And then the breakdowns in the way they think about their workloads, their structures of services that deliver things like picking and packing and shipping. And so what I want to know at a high level is to be able to define in configuration what each one of these categories are, both the kind of like X and Y vector, and then to be able to align alert policies to how these things are connected so that I can know whether or not everything's going well in a particular area for a particular location.
Okay,
and this
so
is
like a matrix view then of how things are working across different categories, and then it looks like here you have details around specific incidents.
Correct, yeah. So when I click in on one of these things, I'm capable of actually reviewing the entire incident history of, right now everything's fine. When was the last time there actually was an incident? And then if there were an active incident right now, I could click in on that, and that would actually open our alerting product and move you right into being able to acknowledge or start to address whatever the particular concern is.
So giving you multiple viewpoints and also the context that you need to start making actionable decisions.
Right. I mean, moving the conversation into how do you think about your business? Let your technology, let your monitoring around your compute and your software align with that thinking of your business, and be able to define all that in code using the power of our programmable platform. Thanks.